If visiting America, what is something that person should never do? Underestimate distances. When I was a tour guide, far too many customers asked how many hours the train to New York was, in Seattle, and I had to put their jaw back in when I said 5 days. Greater Los Angeles, LA. Long Beach, Anaheim, covers an area larger than Belgium. It takes 5 hours to drive from Orlando to Key West. The infamous Cannonball Run drive from New York to LA covers 677 km, a full 100 kilometers further than driving from Lisbon to Moscow on the M1. Things in the US are far apart. First off, if you see gum on the street, leave it there, it isn't free candy. Second, there are like 30 Ray's pizzas, they all claim to be the original, but the real one's on 11th. And if you see a sign that says Peep Show, that doesn't mean that they're letting you look at the new toys before Christmas. If you find yourself in Florida, absolutely do not swim in the lakes, ditches or channels. Any standing body of water can, and does, have alligators in it. Also possibly water moccasins, and maybe even diseases. Don't think the laws are the same everywhere. You can walk with an open alcohol container in Vegas, but not many other places. Alcohol laws, pot laws, firearms laws, smoking, lots of very different laws, depending on the state and city where you are. Another example is some states don't have open container laws, so passengers in a vehicle can drink all they want. In other states, the driver gets charged even if no alcohol has been consumed by the driver. If you need to transport a previously opened bottle of alcohol, keep it in the trunk. Do not go into the wilderness unprepared. If a trail says 2 miles and 2,000 foot of elevation gain, that's not a nature walk. Do not approach wild animals. Yeah, the moose looks big and stupid, but he'll kill you, so will the bears, mountain lions, alligators, snakes. Don't go anywhere wild alone, and never leave the trail unless you have a lot of wilderness experience. Know what weather to expect, especially at altitude and/or in winter. I live in Oregon, and people get lost in forests all the time, and they're not always found. If you get pulled over by a cop, never step out of your vehicle before the cop comes to you. Never go to the cop, a cop will freak out. Also, it is a tactic people use when they don't want the cop to see something in their vehicle, and cops are very aware of it. It will put them on edge. Stay in your car with your empty hands on the steering wheel, where the cop can see them, and wait for the cop to walk up to your window. And also step out of your vehicle if the cop asks/orders you to. By law you have to for officer safety. Edit. And don't reach for anything without telling/asking the cop what you are reaching for. Cops can freak out when someone reaches for something automatically. They think it might be a gun. And don't give the cops permission to search your car without a warrant. If it's a rental, you don't know what's been in there. If they have probable cause, they don't need your permission. So if they're asking for permission, they're just fishing for a reason. Don't assume that the price shown on an item for sale is your price for said item. There are almost always taxes that are added to the price when you go to pay. If pulled over by the cops, do not exit the vehicle unless they ask you to. The cops might sit in their vehicle for a while, and then they will approach the window and expect you to talk to them while sitting in the car. Don't underestimate the size of the US. We get a lot of international visitors who think they can hit Disney World and the Grand Canyon in 1 or 2 days. America is huge, we've got 50 states for a reason also. Don't expect things to be extremely walkable, or assume a decent public transportation system will be available to you. Urban areas usually have good public transport, but truthfully, America is built around having a car. We have drive-through everything: banks, pharmacies, fast food, and in some states, liquor stores don't. Get weirded out if Americans wave and randomly want to chat you up. We're a pretty talkative bunch, but do watch out for hot-button topics. For example, politics. We're a hot mess right now. If you go to a department store, Kohl's, Target, or even Home Depot, they often try to have people sign up for credit cards. Absolutely don't do this. Tell you non-English speaking friends this. The short time I worked at Target, I often seen people who were clearly just visiting the US get signed up for credit cards. It may not always work since the lack of a social security number, but it is a major time suck for sure. Haggle. There are times it's appropriate to haggle in the US, but none of them are going to come up on your tourist trip. In the US, haggling is basically reserved for high-ticket items and certain services. You can't haggle for things in a store or at a restaurant. The people you're talking to usually don't have the power to change the price, and if they do, they still won't want to. The exceptions would be if the thing in the store is damaged, and they might not reduce the price. They might just take the broken one from you and find you a decent one. Or if the person you're dealing with is a criminal, the guys who sell stolen purses, fake sunglasses and bootleg DVDs in the street in some cities. Goods in stores or at kiosks have a set price based on pretty specific metrics, and everyone pays the same. No one's going to cry or try and convince you if you walk away. Whether you agree with it or not, and the Redditland consensus is not, but please do not leave a restaurant without tipping, unless you've had really bad service. Again, the debate on this can be had another day, but right now IRL these servers depend upon these tips. Don't cut in line, we hate that. Make a tightly scheduled itinerary that involves visiting multiple locations, particularly if those locations are in different states. You probably have no idea how long it takes to go from one place to another, or if they're in the same state. Out west, I was in a gas station in San Diego once when a car full of Asian tourists came in and asked for directions to San Francisco. I tried to explain the whole California is a very long state thing, but they weren't having any of it, so I finally said, go down that street to the freeway, get on going north, and you should start seeing signs in about 5 hours. I have no idea what happened after that, but I hope they made it. Most places don't allow alcohol in an open container in public. Have your drinks at the hotel, bar or restaurant. Can be fined or arrested depending on state. Or put that ST in a tumbler and keep it hidden. Say the N-word. One of my uncles was a recent immigrant and someone jokingly told him to greet black people with the N-word. He did so innocently and got his ass kicked. Don't pee in public, no matter how bad you have to go. Don't do it, I mean it. Don't edit for the comments, don't, because you can get arrested and will have to register as a sex offender. No, we don't usually pee in the middle of the street, but say you're drunk at night in Boston and you think you can sneak a pee in an alley next to a building or in the corner of a parking lot. If you are unlucky enough, you will get arrested. Edit. 2. Because I'm sick of reading this. Urinating in public itself isn't the crime you should be scared of. It's if the AE cop charges you with indecent exposure or even public lewdness. Both are crimes which may require you to register as a sex offender. If you're driving through a neighborhood where people have their shirts off, do not stop for anyone. You have reached the bad part of town and want to leave it as soon as possible. Maybe not true for all places, but in the land of limitless guns and crazy people, it's not a bad rule of thumb. I'll say this as a guy who moved here a short while ago, last year. Don't underestimate how big the personal space bubbles of Americans are, especially if you come from a culture where people are more packed together. Americans have pretty big personal space bubbles, and suddenly getting too close makes people uncomfortable here. Before you go to a restaurant, make sure you can afford the food plus a tip. Think about how you feel about it or whatever. But not tipping here is a DK move. Don't underestimate how large or diverse it is. Yes, you've seen Americans portrayed as one type on TV, but common sense should tell you a country this large has a lot of variations between people. Just like most other countries, you won't see all of America in one trip either unless you have a lot of time. Focus on one region and get a lot more bang for your buck. Be prepared for how loud and conversational Americans are. Those personal space bubbles, they speak loudly to cover them. So if you're from a culture where people speak in low tones generally, this may be a bit of a culture shock. Take advantage of free drink refills/free water in restaurants. It's amazing. One of my favorite small things about America, a lot of towns are very car-centric. Be prepared for that. Respect and visit the national parks. I was very impressed with how the national parks here are well maintained. You may be tempted to only visit the cities like LA or New York, but take time to go see the parks. Beautiful nature on display. If you're going to Las Vegas, don't attend the timeshare presentations unless you're absolutely prepared to be bored to tears for a long time. In fact, there should be a whole separate thread for Las Vegas alone because tourists get scammed in so many ways. In Lucky, I had locals guide me around as I settled. Also make sure you are prepared to pay resort fees in hotels. Yes, even the shittier ones. Avoid Taco Bell. Go get some authentic Mexican food. Seriously, avoid Taco Bell. Get some birria tacos instead. And lastly, as any other place, try and be mindful of cultural norms. America being so out there with its culture and people around the world being exposed to it leaves a lot of people overly confident about smaller cultural cues and norms. Seriously, I know so many people that ended up looking like dickheads because they failed to understand that and end up looking really bad. Talk respectfully to people. Don't use words you heard on TV and are offensive to certain groups. Don't generalize, don't loudly debate politics with locals you don't know, etc. This is common sense. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification. See you on another video. Bye.